Hi, this is Katie Nip, and you're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with DCal.
What up, testing. 1 2 1 2. Are we on? Looks like we are. Hey, this is DCal, host of the E.I.T.H.R podcast. How you guys doing?
Here we go, a show to slowly unfold some views that's in the news that make us uncomfortable. You never heard this podcast is broadcast in contrast to popular opinion. Stop that, assuming that you knew every view that's brewing. So keep it moving. If you got any sense, then you're welcome to put two so in. Listen in, relax, chill, take a breather, and let DCal put y'all onto the ether.
What up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy DCal here, hosting the E.I.T.H.R podcast from the GNSHQ here in Northern California. Happy Monday. Hope everyone had a really good weekend. In Northern California, we are cooking. It is triple digits. It is hot. I swear the devil has the AC on in hell because all the heat has came up here to earth. 916-282-9372 is the phone number here to the E.I.T.H.R podcast. Social media, you can follow us on X, Twitter, or Instagram. The handle is the E.I.T.H.R, THE-E-I-T-H-R. To those of you who are new to the podcast, welcome. To those of you who are familiar with the podcast, welcome back. The E.I.T.H.R stands for the elephant in the room, where we talk about issues, topics that you normally would not be able to have with your peers, because most people tend to be a little one-sided. The aspect of this platform is not necessarily to change your mind, but to give you a better idea of possibly what you may be disagreeing about. So many conversations typically tend to be people screaming and yelling at one another versus hearing and understanding the message, the point you're trying to get across. So that's what we try to do here, is look at things from a multitude of different perspectives. So we like to do what's called inspirational and motivational, and we like to give shout out to people before we do everything. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do with the podcast today. So I want to make sure I give my shout out again to Miss Katie Nip, blues singer, album top 5 for as the album in 2024. Right now she's on tour, I believe, in Oregon, performing up there with her and the band. So I want to make sure I give a shout out to her. So if you guys can follow her on social media, that'll be dope. You can go to the E.I.T.H.R podcast and you'll see her right up there. For as inspirational, motivational, I'm going to get straight to that right quick. The change you're looking for is in the work that you are avoiding. The change you are looking for is in the work you are avoiding. A lot of us, and this is just my take, how I see it, right? A lot of us, we want change, but we're not willing to change. And most of the change that you are asking to happen, to take place, starts from within you. Whether it's quality of life, the way you see work, relationship, marriage, family, health, whatever the case may be, it has to start with you. And there's too many people out there, myself was included at one point, where you need to change for me. Well, be the change you want to see in the world, and then you'll see the world around you change. So some of the things that you are afraid of doing is exactly what needs to be done. Now, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, so it's going to take baby steps. You can start by doing things that you normally feel wouldn't necessarily make a drastic change. Something like set your alarm clock an extra 15 minutes earlier. That way you can get that extra set of wake up time that you need. That tends to set you back during the day of getting your day started. Little things like that, man. So what we're going to do is get into a couple of topics real briefly for this episode number 146. Right after we get a word from our sponsors, your boy DCal here, the E.I.T.H.R podcast from Northern California. We'll be right back after this.
Crush all the struggles and pressures that get in your way, big or small, minor or major. We all are fighting demons that others do not know about. But it's how you handle it that makes it look easy. Shop at Mile.today. Again, Mile, MILE.today. Mile.today.
Hi, people. Welcome back to the E.I.T.H.R podcast. So, really, I'm going to talk about real briefly on this episode. A lot of people don't really pay no mind. And it was a post on social media on our Instagram page, and I'll just read it to you guys real quick, where isn't it interesting how so many tribal communities encourage people to interact / pay respects to their elders and their knowledge, yet certain groups try to keep that gap large and growing. Why is that? Here's kind of what I mean by that post right there. And it's you have a generation of people that's ahead of you. You have a generation of people that's behind you. Then you currently have the generation that you are in, right? Typically, the generation that you're in has this belief, because you are growing up in the current state of the world that is known as now, right? The present state. That the generation before you is out of date. That the generation before you, information is not relevant. It's not important. It isn't what's happening. It's old news. It's the past, so on and so forth. One thing about history is that we're bound to repeat it, especially if it's history that you pay no attention to or you tend to overlook. And the generation after you, well, they don't know anything. They don't know as much as you, right? You can look in the workplace. You can look in school. You can just look in the family. You can look in the household, right? You have, anyone who's younger than you, they don't know shit. Anyone who's older than you don't know shit. And this is a cycle that happens all the time. And it kind of made me think on why is it when it comes to certain issues, especially social issues or even political issues, why do we not pay attention to those who were before us, right? During my generation, what is it, Gen X? I mean, depending on who you ask, I'm either Gen X or millennial, depending on what date they got. We would look at the people who were, ahead of us, and they were our living encyclopedias, right? We would hear stories and experiences from what they did. Now, growing up as a teenager, it was always what you went through isn't the same as me, and it's not like that now. As you get older and you kind of pay attention to life, it's exactly the same. The only difference is they repackage it. It's just redesigned. It's reshaped, but it's the same bullshit. The internet has made things extremely convenient, but it has also, from my perspective, crippled the ability to have critical thinking for yourself. Before, we would read books, and there were certain books you had to go, you had certain steps in order to publish something. You had to get accredited, you had to validate, you had to have your sources vetted, you had to have all these things, all these boxes checked, right? Now, granted, it still may have been a very similar system back then. It just wasn't as digitized or as convenient. It had audiobooks, right? But it was one of those situations where you had to take the time to research your resources and research the information and double check it and compare it to somebody else. And it kind of took you down this whole rabbit hole of information that you had to go through. Now, the internet can do the same thing, but our attention spans have significantly dropped, generally speaking, across the board for everybody. There's so much information that's going on in the world right now, man, that I have noticed many people don't necessarily believe the truth. They tend to believe what sounds good to them, or they tend to believe what they agree with. I myself was a person who did the exact same thing, until one day I realized all because you're saying what I agree with doesn't necessarily make this information true. It just means that I like it. It just means that I agree with it. I could be wrong. So what I started doing was looking at sources that would oppose the perspective that I had. Listen, it takes a very mature person to be able to do something like that, because the first thing you're going to want to do is attack or feel attacked or lash out or shut down and ignore the information that goes against what you tend to believe to be fact and or truth. You could apply that to politics. You can apply that toward religion. You can apply that towards social issues. You can apply that towards whatever belief system that you have versus something else that goes against it. And because I would look at things from the opposing side, it allowed me to see things not necessarily personally, but try to look at everything more objectively, right? I'm going to use politics in this example, right? Growing up, I would always lean more towards left. And it wasn't necessarily because that's what I believed in. It was more out of my environment. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to see things. This is how life's supposed to go. Okay. So everything was geared more towards the left, more towards liberal, more democratic. And anything that was more conservative, anything that tended to be more right-leaning, anything that tended to be a little bit more Republican-esque, I didn't necessarily shy away from it, but it didn't really hold much weight, in my opinion. Again, I'm only using politics to kind of just paint a picture. You can apply this to anything that fit in your lifestyle. So conversations all through high school with a lot of my friends who were more on the conservative side, would conflict, but we were young. As much as we didn't know anything, we thought we knew everything. And I remember listening to a sports talk radio back in the Bay Area, and one of the guys, on the host of the show, got called out by one of the listeners for following conservative politicians. And his response is, because I like to be informed. I want to be informed with what's going on from both sides. It doesn't mean that I'm more this. It doesn't mean that I'm more that. It just means that I want to know where people are coming from. To me, that was very profound, because it was like, okay, the Bay Area is more of a liberal location in the state of California. And, there's some conservative cities in the state as well, which is interesting because, again, from a political standpoint, California is a conservative state, but yet it votes liberal. Figure that out. So it was the seed that was planted for me to start looking things from more of a neutral perspective. I always saw myself as being neutral, but more leaning towards one side. As life goes on, man, I tend to see things, okay. Chris Rock, I think, was the one who said it best. You can't be 100% on one thing all the time. You just can't. It doesn't make any sense. It damages everything, right? You can't be 100% conservative on this. You can't be 100% liberal on this. But that's not how it's presented to everybody, right? You have to be one or you have to be the other. And if you happen to be an independent who looks at things from a neutral standpoint, then it seems that both sides don't like you because you haven't picked one, right? I bring that up because generations think they know more than the generations before and the generations after. We're going to get more into the politics aspect later, but at least with the point that I'm reaching for is there are people who are older than you who can sit back and tell you how things have not changed. They've just been repackaged, right? There are certain aspects, if you listen to people who are in their 60s, in their 70s, God willing, in their 80s and up. Yes, they're older. Yes, times have changed compared to when they were your age. Yes, the world has spun a few times and it looks different. But they can also tell you how things are extremely similar to then versus now. The way I look at certain stuff, man, when it comes to, we like to stick with familiarity. We like what works. We like what's comfortable. We like when things appear, feel, seem similar because we know how to maneuver that. You can look at relationships. We know how to maneuver that. When it comes to the workplace, people don't necessarily like going out of their comfort zone because it's not comfortable, right? So they tend to stick with what they know. But anybody who's ever been to the gym, growth hurts. Growth is uncomfortable. Growth does require a little bit of pain and some uneasiness in order for you to be able to get better, to get stronger, to get faster. You got to keep that in mind at the workplace, right? So you might work with someone who isn't necessarily familiar with the way things work on this app, or the way they work in this system on the computer, or the way they work on their phone. But if you, generally speaking, if you learn how to communicate with them in a language that they are fluent in, you can make a connection to easier to train them, or you can learn a new skill that you were not aware of. So, I'm one, man. I'm always trying to learn something that's different than what I know, just so I can be aware of, because you never know, something may happen and you need to flip that switch and go about it in this way. And I was talking to homegirl the other day, and we were discussing about how people are just socially awkward. And they're not necessarily socially awkward to this generation. They're just socially awkward to the generation that we come from. Because, we had the facial expressions, body language, tonality, things people were doing, fidgeting with keys, reaching for a door, leaning. There were certain cues that a person would give you physically that told them whether they were interested in the conversation or waiting for the conversation to end so they can leave, and they didn't want to be rude about it. Social cues have changed, but they're still there. It's just they look different. As a person, if they're interested, their mannerisms are going to be a little bit different. I'm only bringing this up, again, going back to the workplace, is sometimes there are people who know how to do things differently than how you are familiar with. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. It just means that you don't understand it. Try to keep yourself more informed with what it is that they know that you may not know. Okay? So I know that sounded like a tangent for some people, but the whole political thing was just kind of let you know how some people are just embedded on one side or the other. But being informed with the opposing side kind of allows you to have the perspective of, oh, that's how you see it. Okay. And I remember having a conversation with somebody from Dallas. And this is when the Colin Kaepernick thing was the it of the news, right? And I kind of broke down why Colin took a knee. Because he only saw it from a perspective. Because that's how it was presented where he's from. I said, nah, bro. He's looking at it from this, that, and the other. Now, you might not hear about it, but those aren't hot buttons that they want you to understand. So that's probably why it's not presented to you. And I remember dude was like, you know what? I never looked at it from that way. And I appreciate you telling me that. And I had a conversation the other day with someone on social media about Trump. And she was like, it's really refreshing to have a conversation with somebody, not getting cussed out, not getting yelled at, not being, told off, but having a respectable conversation whether we agree or not. I said, listen, man, just try to keep yourself informed as much as possible, because a lot of the information, when it comes to shit like that, they're not going to give you everything. They're only going to give us enough for us to be able to form our own opinions about what it is that we just read, what we just saw, what we just heard. And then we got to kind of fill in the blanks on our own. And some people just are brighter than others. I'll put it that way. So try to be more informed. That's it. So if you come across someone that's of a different generation, sometimes you guys are speaking the same thing. You're just talking in different languages. And it's a frustrating moment because you both don't understand each other, but you're trying to. Just try to walk in each other's shoes, right? I see it all the time, man. Like I said, when I'm out, doing, DoorDash from time to time, and I'm at my DashMart location. Shout out to DashMart. Y'all know who you are. I hear people who are waiting for their orders bitching and complaining about how long it's taking for the orders to get done. And they have these suggestions of what the workers need to do to make it more efficient. And I'm sitting there listening to them, and my eyes are rolling and my head is shaking. And I'm like, bro, you guys have no idea, because I understand what's going on the other side of that counter. They do not. They're not informed. So some people, I have to sit back and say, look, man, the system works like this. And sometimes, it's on a timer, and the timer, it presets and it automatically goes off and tells us this when it's not actually the case. And they got so many orders and sitting, and, so many items, and all these orders came in at one time. And there's so many things that go wrong that we don't see. And some of these people, they don't want to hear it because, the world spins on their axis. Other people are like, oh, now I have a better idea of what's going on. Some people just want to come in there, man. There's 15 people in front of them, and they decide to walk in, number 16, ring the bell, and expect their order to be done right now because they don't want to wait. Some people just have this entitlement that you cater to me and nobody else. I try to look at it from their perspective. But sometimes people don't want to look at it from a perspective different from theirs. Don't beat your head against that wall, bro. Sometimes those cats, they don't want to understand. They just want shit to be the way they want it to be. And in my opinion, these people are going to have some miserable lives when it comes down to it, Chief. They just, I hate to see what their personal life looks like, because I'm quite confident they're miserable. just by the way they treat people. You know what I'm saying? So that's that. You can always tell how someone truly thinks about you, how they treat someone that they don't have to respect. Says a lot about the person's character. You feel me? So that, just try to keep that in mind, man. Like I said, try to, as much as you guys can, be the change that you want to see in the world. As much as you can, bro. Just try to do your best at that. And again, the work that you're trying to avoid is the work that you need to do to make that change. That's how that works. It's not going to be overnight. Some people it's going to take a little bit more work than others, but usually the harder the work is, the more appreciative you are when the work is done. So now we got that out the way. I kind of want to bring this up right quick. Haliey Welch. Haliey. The name may not sound familiar, but you the H.I.T.R. H.I.T.R. girl was by somebody, on the street, and she said what she said. Viral sensation. How the world is so entertained by her response to the question that was given, that she literally became this overnight sensation. Whether that was her intention or not, that's exactly what happened. So then she got all these endorsement deals, and she got these guest appearances and VIP treatments and all this other fun stuff, right? Okay, listen. The point of me bringing her up is not to, fault her, because, like I said, she didn't do anything wrong except for answer the question, and the response picked up traction like wildfire. But she was a guest speaker at this country music concert, and she went on stage and do the whole little crowd hyping thing, and it was dead silent for her, bro. Like, people were talking and murmuring more while she was introducing who she was introducing than when she finally finished and stopped talking. It was quiet, and it's almost like the only person you could hear rooting her on was someone she personally knew and came with. Here's go to the E.I.T.H.R. Instagram and the Twitter account. There's a link along with to the article. Kind of point out for people, that's how quickly fame can last nowadays. Because this woman had a viral sensation, for a month, if that. And now all of a sudden it appears, in one instance, it appears her light has started to dim, at least in some circles, right? And in this article, it talks about how she's done more with her 15 minutes of fame than the majority of other people who are put in a similar situation, right? For like pet adoption places and different type of charities and fundraising. And I'm not knocking her hustle. Again, I'm not sitting back saying she's a bad person. I'm simply just saying it's crazy. You go from hot to dead ass ice cold in a blink of an eye. There was no gradual drop. It was just a fall, right? I'm hoping that her success doesn't tailor off as dramatically or continues to tailor off. But it is interesting, bro. A lot of people, the attention span, it certainly is you hear 1 minute, gone the next. It's just wild to me. Like, that shit's crazy. I remember a time where when you became a celebrity, like you had a moment. But this is like 1/4 of a moment. Like, it's wild how fast the limelight shifts with people. That could be a good thing, because things are constantly being new. But also look at it as it's a bad thing, because what do you need to do to stay relevant in the public's eye, especially when you become such this overnight wildfire of a sensation? So you got to be cautious and careful about what you ask for, even if you didn't ask for it. It's just very interesting, bro, like how fast shit has turned. That's that on her. Like, it was a funny clip, made a bunch of memes, and now it just seems like, okay, well, you know, your last week, it's this week. Kind of crazy how shit just moves. So, real quick, in the aspects of politics, we said we're going to get back to politics later, and now it's later. Ms. Harris, Vice President of the United States of America, has now been set in place for the presidential candidate to run against, at least so far, against Donald Trump. Joe Biden steps down, which is interesting. I saw this meme earlier today. It's a I don't know if it's AI generated. Probably is AI generated, of Donald Trump, Joe Biden sleep on a table. He sleep on a table. I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick while I got you guys here. I'm going to as you listen to me. Facebook. No, that's not it. That's not it. Could have swore I had it. So it was a Joe Biden sleep, and then forward is arms folded, and there's a book open. Can't wait to see up and finds out that it's kind of fun, right? Because the whole Sleepy Joe thing. His span as I was rated, and a lot made fun of his age and his speech and mumbling, just a bunch of, what did you just say to me, bro? Like, moments behind a microphone, right? I don't know if Kay Harris is going to do it. Here's the logic behind that. I don't lean towards America, even in 2024, being okay with a woman as president. I don't. Which is funny to me. Not funny in like joking, but funny like in really. Because everybody wants to sit back and say, hey, man, if we have a woman president, this country's going to go to shit. It was like, bro, it's been nothing but men, and look what has happened. And I had a conversation with a buddy of mine out in Michigan. You know, he feels a certain type of way about having, you know, his preferred Republican candidate reelected as president. And I made the point, if you go back to when we were kids, and no matter what side the president was on, red or blue, right? Shout out to Kendrick Lamar, whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. One presidency, we would have war overseas. The other presidency, it seems that we had war within our streets. There was always a war. It was just whether the war was domestic or whether the war was foreign. But there was always a war. So you're gonna have one. It's just a matter of who's paying for it. That's kind of where my point to him was. He was like, damn, bro, I never really thought of it that way. Like when you put it in that perspective, it's like war on the street, war across the pond. It's gonna pop off regardless. Because war is one way for them to raise money. Is chaos. Right? That's that. But I honestly don't see how it could be worse than has it been for the past 12 years. And I think a lot of it is just change. A lot of it is economic change. We're going from brick and mortar to more digital. Like things are just changing across the world. And you have to understand the people who are in charge of this change, they don't live where you live or where I live for the most part. They don't come from our background. So a lot of the solutions that they come up with appears not to really resonate with those of us because those ideas didn't necessarily, it appears, come from those who have to deal with it. And the way I look at it, man, we're children to them. So they give us a solution to the problem, thinking that their suggestion would fix it, being that it makes certain things look at us as incompetent and how we don't know how to deal with the problem. And this is the reason why they don't really take us seriously. And that's kind of, in my opinion, a very narcissistic manner of looking at it. Because how can I solve a problem if I've never walked down that path? If I've never worn those shoes? If I've never even been in anything remotely similar to that, give a valid suggestion, of course I'm going to make it worse. And then have the audacity to judge you when my non-related suggestion doesn't work on your issues for your climate. But that's kind of how shit goes, right? So Pelosi endorses her. Barack Obama refuses to endorse her. He probably has some for the position. But Pelosi endorses her, and it's wild because after her endorsement, Nancy Pelosi's endorsement of Kamala Harris, it was a record-breaking amount of funds for the Democrats, like over $49.5 million in one day, for funds for her campaign. And some people, like Democratic donors, were very uneasy because they wasn't sure about Joe Biden and his health or his mental state or his well-being and his whole status. They were very hesitant to see what was going on. So a lot of donors paused on that. Well, the moment Harris got in the approval and got into the position, a lot of Democratic donors came back, boy. One of them being Abigail Disney has become a donor for Kay Harris. So that's going to be a big move for her in this presidential race. And it's only been, give or take 24 hours. I was talking to the teacher about this, and my take is this, man. Whether Trump wins, it's going to be a problem. Here's why. The supporters, even though they tend to be more louder on the internet than in person, they are not going to go out without a fight. From what I've seen, they are the ones who, if he wins, they're going to be outside. And it's going to be, if you're not Team Red, it's going to be a problem for you to process and digest because you're not going to be able to shut them up. If he loses, just January 6th was just the tip. If he loses. Again, I got some conservative friends. I don't believe that they're the kind of people that will go out and do what the extremes would do. But they're going to be upset. They're going to feel he was unjustly outnumbered in the politics. Because, they have their beliefs, especially from the last election. And the way I look at it from the last election is when Trump and Clinton were going, nobody really voted from the Democratic side because people were kind of like, bro, like, I don't want her and I damn sure don't want him. I'm cool. I'm just going to sit back and I ain't tripping. But because those who liked him, supported him, meaning Trump, outnumbered the Democratic side so dramatically, it was kind of like he whipped the Dems' ass. No, people just, for whatever reason, didn't process. If we don't vote for her, people are still going to vote for him. And so it made it a one-sided election. So when Biden got in the mix, people was like, oh, hell no. We don't want this dude back. So those who did not vote, voted. Those who didn't vote prior made sure to vote. At least that's what it appeared from what I looked at it. So when they thought it was going to be a easy cakewalk the second time in the election, and it wound up being an ass beating in that election, people felt that he got cheated. Trump got cheated. And I'm like, he didn't get cheated. It's just the opposing side actually did something this time. They were like, oh, we don't want to do this again. So I guess doing nothing was worse than doing something. So we're going to go ahead and do something. And here you go. Biden took the office. The reason why I don't believe that she's going to win again is a female president. I don't think this country is ready for that just yet. However, I do look at it and say, if there was to be a female president, man, the message you would send to women would be just like crazy about, the achievement that women can make. It would be a hell of a message. But those who, remember this, those who are anti-woke, oh, they would have a fucking field day. They would throw the biggest tantrum. And not only as a woman, but as a woman of color. And I was telling the teacher this. No, it wasn't the teacher. It was my partner, Doug. The last thing they're going to want is a woman of color from Oakland, California in office. They would not. They can't do that. The sad part about having a woman in positions such as where Harris is, and I think this happens to all women, is a lot of her past is going to get brought up and used against her. Whether you like dude or not, old boy she's running against, he's the kind of person that would definitely troll her for her past. As I get older, I literally am like, bro, everybody's got a past. Everyone has a past. Can't escape it. They're going to bring up that one instant in her past because it's already coming up, and I'm not going to mention it because everyone knows what it is. And if you don't know what it is, you'll find out what it is because it's going to get brought back up again. My thing is going to use certain things that women have done to get in the game. Y'all better keep in mind, your mama may not have got that promotion had she not. did what it was that she did. Keep that in mind. Your mama might not have made that promotion if she didn't do what she did. She may not have got that loan for that business if she didn't do what she did. It's one thing when a man does it, but I understand the double standard when a woman does it. So, if anything, it's going to be more humiliating than degrading. But I guess depending on who you ask, I think her past really matter. I guess, but it's a great way to throw the attention to something else, to sway the emotion, to manipulate. And I honestly feel that's going to become a target once her traction starts to pick up more momentum. And if she is elected and she is victorious, yeah, it's the disrespect to this woman is going to be outrageous. It's going to be a problem, right? Here's the biggest issue people have with Donald Trump. His attempted assassination. Listen, nobody is denying the fact that my man got shot at. It was clear. It was evident. No one is saying that didn't happen. I think where people have the struggle of believing is he was struck by the bullet. That's where a lot of folks are, bro, that wasn't it. And listen, if it's your guy, that's your guy. If that's your guy, that's you're going to believe in, you're going to support. Listen, I get it. I get it. I get it. But if you look at the picture of his ear, and homegirl Cabrona and I, we were talking about this or chatting about this. It's like there's appears to be certain things that just doesn't make sense, that doesn't connect. If you grew up in an environment where shootings happen frequently, if you grew up in an environment where violence is highly common, you'll see certain patterns that just didn't match. And there's certain things that he has, talking about Trump, has a tendency of doing that makes people question the authenticity of what really happened. Again, I understand he was shot at 100%. But there are certain things that just doesn't connect when you look at and you compare it to things of the past. And it was completely sloppy. I don't know how the hell they let old boy get up there. And you have folks telling you, hey man, there's somebody climbing up there. Hey, there's somebody on this rooftop. Hey, there's somebody up there with something pointed over there at him. What the someone needs to do something. It sucks. My man lost his life protecting his family. That's horrible. It's unfortunate, man. It should have never happened. It should have never happened. Heart goes out to his family. It's just certain things, if you look and pay attention to things that happened in the past, certain things just don't add up. And I lean towards that's where people have the biggest issue with him, is whenever something happens, it almost appears to be an opportunity for him to do fill in the blank. Right? Remember when he was in office, there was the protesters outside the White House, and he used to, and if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves me correctly, I think they were using and disperse the crowd. Here's what people had brought to my attention. That was the time, for lack of better terms, right? That was the time where he used it as a photo op. Because remember, right after that, the crowd's being dispersed. My man had the Bible was like upside down, and he held the Bible for the cameras to take pictures. And that was like right around the time where he started to sell Bible. Later on that day, if I'm not mistaken, that was also the day where he was reportedly down in the bunker that's at the bottom of the White House, because apparently there's a bunker down there for, if events happen. And if you look at this, he lights off. And I remember this, people like, the White House lights turned off. He had, and the joke was, he didn't want anyone knowing he was there. There's certain things he has done that has made people sit back and say, the benefit of the country is not his priority. The benefit of his name is the perk he's going after. Now, he's trying to give credit where credit is due. I don't agree with his business practices, but I do respect his business knowledge. What I have observed, it seems, majority of the shit that goes on with politics is to keep us entertained. And there's one thing that Trump knows, it's ratings. Dan knows that ratings. He gotta be wrestling. If I gotta, I'll be. From where I look at it, I don't really see him taking a lot of the issues that we all want to address necessarily to heart. I think after his first stint as presidency, I do think he has a better idea of what goes into it. Sure. But I see this more as a position to expand the legacy of his name, more so than fix some of the problems with the economy. That's how I look at it. Because a lot of people choose not to remember he was the one that was in charge in 2020. So for those of you who sit back and say he's going to fix the economy, what happened in 2020? Do y'all remember? Do you remember what the America looked like? Do you remember what several countries looked like under his presidency? Granted, being a president versus the CEO of a business. Two entirely different things. I get that. The second time around, I think he learned what to, what not to. But he doesn't appear to be the kind of person who would admit to his mistakes, especially when they were his mistakes. He, to me, seems like the kind of individual that would admit to his mistakes as long as he can blame someone else for his mistakes. Then he'll admit to them. Harris, I don't see people collectively taking her serious either. And I lean towards, when it comes to politics, man, so many people look at America as a fucking joke. And it's where we're at the point, from my perspective, nobody really gives a shit anymore. Everyone's kind of just been desensitized. And that's a huge problem. But I also look at it as a way for someone to actually stand ground, make a difference, plant a change, so people can look and see, oh, this person's like for real. Okay, cool. Is Trump going to do it his second term? Is Harris going to do it in position? Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see. But it's going to be a shit show no matter what. Anyway, it's your boy DCal from the E.I.T.H.R podcast here for the GNS HQ. Make sure you reach out to us on social media. TheEITHR. Instagram and Twitter. GNSETV.com. Make sure you guys get the free subscription to our TV channel. And we will be back for episode 147 soon. You guys be good.
Hey guys, this is Katie Nip. Be sure to check out my new album, Me. It's on every platform in existence, but Bandcamp is my favorite.